WIBTA for refusing to do a reading at my dad's wedding. 24 of my dad 50M is getting married next month to his 33F fiance. They've been together since I was 10. You can do the math, and have been planning their wedding for a good few years now. It got pushed back about 18 months as they had a baby and the dates conflicted. My brother, who is very close to my age but younger, has had a significant part in the wedding. He is best man and has been invited to lots of fittings, parties, etc. I have had no part in any of this. I'm not a bridesmaid, wasn't invited to any bachelorette parties, or involved at all. A lot of my family found this really odd, but I didn't really care. About 2 months ago, I was asked to be a witness at their legal ceremony on a separate date, which I was happy to do, although it meant me canceling birthday plans. But now, a month before the wedding, I've been asked to do a reading at the ceremony. I don't want to disappoint my dad, but I really want to say no. In all honesty, partly because I'm bitter that it seems like a last-moment consolation for not being involved anywhere else. But also because I don't really know what to say about love between a man I've had a somewhat strained relationship with for 14 years and a woman who has always made me feel like an inconvenience. And I've never really known where I stood with, due to the strange age differences. I get on with my dad and his son now despite a rocky road in my teenage years, mostly for the sake of my dad and new sibling who I love dearly. So I don't know if I am being enough for holding onto old feelings towards the relationship that split up my parents, or if I'm valid for not wanting to appease what I suspect is a guilty conscience. P.S. If I am please give me ideas on what to read. They aren't religious at all. Say no. You're just an afterthought. They probably had family members say something, so they decided to add you at the last minute. Express that to him so he knows how you feel. No, what are you going to read, Lolita? Tell your dad this feels like an afterthought and it's kind of insulting. If you want to keep the peace, tell him you'll do it for him, but that it's still a bit of a slap in the face that you've had zero involvement and feel like less than a real family member. Ask him to choose something short and only future-facing, as that's where everyone needs to be looking because the past with you has been rocky. But first and foremost, talk to your dad. Solo? A lot of my family found this really suddenly. You should make a speech. I think you are did enough for this relationship. I wish I knew enough Shakespeare or whatever defined passage that on the surface sounds romantic, but when you really listen, it's cynical and mean. Suggestion: I remember when the bride, a recent HS graduated, came into my life. Who would have said my father has such an appetite for the juvenile? Ada. Oh, I see, a reading at a religious ceremony. Then try of Kings I, 1:3. When King David was very old, he could not keep warm even when they put covers over him. So his attendants said to him, "Let us look for a young virgin to serve the king and take care of him. She can lie beside him so that our lord the king may keep warm." Then they searched throughout Israel for a beautiful young woman and found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. And they're doing this to save face. They're more than aware. She is aware your family has noticed. Don't give her that last-minute save. Just say no. I'm not comfortable reading in front of people. Tell your dad exactly what you told us in your post. He may not even know you were not invited to any of the pre-wedding activities and thinks was told you didn't want to come. And if there were no such activities, you'll find out. You were at the most important wedding. Also, I do not understand why they need another one in church. Where I am, the religious ceremony is also the legal ceremony. You don't need both. I know it varies depending on country. As clearly an afterthought, probably because extended family have asked, what's your role in the wedding? Do you have a +1? I take a 40-year-old and see what your father thinks of the role reversal. Usually the wedding couple picks what is to be read, not you. But just say you will be too nervous and really just want to be in the audience to enjoy the event. Thank you all for validating my feelings. I've been gaslit for years for feeling uncomfy about the whole situation, so the advice and support is really appreciated. I'm planning on trying to meet up with my dad next week and will politely decline on the basis of the short notice and feeling like an afterthought. I will post an update based on the response. I already told you at the engagement party, bridal shower, and bachelorette parties that I didn't do public speaking. Don't you remember? Say yes and find a reading about adultery and pedophilia. Just say no that you aren't a fan of public speaking. NTA. But if you do choose to read, may I suggest a passage from the marriage chapter of Khalil Gibran's The Prophet? What a great time to roast them. You can start with I was only asked recently to speak, so I didn't have much time to prepare. Maybe in just an afterthought, you can even point out that you were not included in any of the bridal activities so people know that you didn't just choose not to attend, but you were excluded. Add things like she's felt more like a sister to me, and things like that, pointing out their age difference. Parents, keep an eye on your teenage daughters. You can be as petty as you like. Sometimes it's good to be an awe. You can find a reading that would be petty too. Pointing out crap about them as well. Sorry, I'm a little grumpy, so my advice isn't the kindest. But your situation kind of sucks. Don't owe them anything. You could start out my new stepmother was a 9-year-old child when I was born to my mother and my 26-year-old father. Say no you'd love to, but this is a precious moment which you'd need to give a lot of thought to and practice, and you just don't have enough time. But thank you for asking, you're so deeply touched. You've got to live with the fallout. Make sure there is none. Your dad is a predator, but you already know that. There's a lot about preying on young girls in Margaret Atwood's The Testament. Say no, they expect you to watch the baby. NTAH, please tell them nitrogen monoxide with no explanation. NTA, you can bow out silently and let it go, or bow out and make your reasons known and prepare for blowback. But should you decide to do it, the petty patty in me recommends a passage from Groomed by Elizabeth Fisher, IJS. No is a complete sentence. I'd be honest, L2. I don't feel comfortable because it seems like an afterthought. Innings about their age difference, about how stepmother treats you like unwanted baggage, about how you're being thrown a bone to shut you up about not being invited to any other wedding celebrations. Make up your own passage. I'm sure with the right turn of phrase and the right tone, you could plant a lot of ideas into smarter people's heads while shallow people would take it all at face value. Or just say it all bluntly and burn those bridges. If it's a long poem, NTA, keep it short. Not an asshole for saying no. You don't need a reason to say no. I was asked to speak at a friend's reception. They had been married a total of 7 times between them prior to this one. I very sincerely said best of luck and don't blame me if it doesn't work out. Look, if it's important to your day, then I think you should really try to do a speech. Start by saying how happy you are to be here for their important day, like thank you dad and stepmom for letting me be part of this important day for you. When I was 10 years old and first met stepmom, who was only 19 at the time, I wondered if this relationship could ever last and why a 19-year-old would be interested in a 36-year-old man. I also thought why a 39-year-old man who has 2 children would be interested in a 19-year-old who is only 9 years older than his own daughter, but look where we are now. Then just say some stuff about how great the day was and how the bride looked amazing. Not that hard, is it? You are not the, but if you decide to read something, make it that wonderful quote read by Kip at the end of Napoleon Dynamite, something about living technology. A month before the wedding, you're an afterthought. They weren't going to involve you at all, but someone mentioned to them that it's odd you aren't part of the wedding, so this is them making things right. If you want to be involved, then great, but you shouldn't feel obligated and they probably won't care either way. Just say no, but if you want to be kind of weird about it, say yes, and when the moment arrives, whip out a small table and a tarot card deck or a teacup and give them a reading of their future. Tell them nitrogen monoxide. You aren't comfortable with doing this, so don't do this. Do a reading about how she's made you feel since you were 14. Give examples and watch it blow. Or say no. You are well within the right. And perhaps give your dad a preview of why you don't want to be a part of this. Not that you've been anything but an afterthought from his child bride. Ask about the readings are fairly standard pieces of scripture, or poems, or short passages about love. Usually the bride and groom pick out the readings, or the officiant gives suggestions, but they never leave it to the reader to just write something on their own. If you don't feel comfortable reading in public, and it's going to make you too nervous, it's absolutely okay to decline. If they give you the reading, and you don't feel as if you believe what you're reading as it relates to your dad and his fiancé, then you can also decline. You can decline for any reason without being tough. Decline and be a guest at the wedding. His fiancé didn't want you included in the preparations, and this is probably an afterthought because someone in your dad's family has mentioned it to him. I hope you realize that stepmom chose your bae for their legal marriage to prevent your dad from attending future birthday celebrations with you. They will decline because it will also be their anniversary. Make the speech about how you and step grew up together. Thanks for watching.